And welcome back to The Floor Plan. Matt Wimper's my name, Dr. Libby Sander alongside me. Hello.
Hello, Matt.
We've got a lot to talk about today.
We do. It just feels like there's more and more news and more interesting things happening every week.
Some feedback from our last episode, though, which was a little risque. Our last episode, of course. Bit of naughty business in the office.
It was. So
What were the stats again?
54% of your colleagues have had sex with another one of your colleagues. And over half of them in your office. So a lot of people have been asking me about this, saying, who do you think it is in my workplace? And I'm like, I'm trying not to think about this actively. And one commenter online, this was actually lovely. So she wrote, I'd never thought about this, but I probably would never have got married, she said, because I met my husband at work and we're both really introverted. And so it gave us time to get to know each other before we started dating. So I thought that was lovely.
That is kind of lovely, isn't it?
But then I had a quite opposite experience to that. I got a call from ABC Darwin radio.
This is funny. Yes.
It was. I'm still recovering. Anyway, lovely producer, guy with a Scottish accent. Now, English is my first language,
yes,
but I think most listeners may know that anyone with a very heavy Scottish accent, struggling to understand them, even if English is your first language.
You've really got to lean in, yeah.
Oh, so he jumps on. He said, we really want to get you on. There's a big story up here. And I assumed he'd been listening to the podcast about this matter.
Yes.
And he said, oh, hang on, I'm just being distracted by my colleagues at the moment. It's my birthday tomorrow. And they said they want to give me a sausage sizzle. I don't know what that is, so no. I said no. And I said, oh, don't worry. It's just a barbecue or a grill.
Yeah.
And he said, look, there's this story, senior public servant up here. He's been in investigation. He's been sacked because it was found out that over the course of a number of years, he's been taking too many sex days. We'd love to get you on to chat about this and get your expertise. And I was like, oh,
no.
What is happening? So for our listeners around the world who don't know, Darwin, the north of Australia, it's a pretty extreme place, very, very hot. That's where Crocodile Dundee was made, wasn't it?
Well,
wrestling crocodiles.
Yeah.
It's an extreme place. So I was thinking, look, I've been working for a minute. Maybe this is a phenomenon I've never heard of. But I was taken aback, Matt. And then he went on to say, look, and he was arranging this while he was at work using his work email. Wow, this is interesting. Yeah. And he said, yeah, so can you come on tomorrow? And
were you at some point going, oh, well, based on the statistics we were talking about last week, I suppose it shouldn't come as any real surprise.
I didn't get that because in my head I'm going, how have I been working for this length of time and I've never heard of this as an actual phenomenon that people openly discuss? So he said, yeah, so, too many, I think there was 15 sex days or however many this guy. I'm like, oh, man. Anyway, so he said, yeah, can you come on tomorrow? And I was like, could you tell me a little bit more about the issue just to make sure that I'm across it?
Yes.
And he said, well, when people might be unwell and then they call in and say they're not going to come to work when they're not actually unwell. And I was like, oh, thank God.
Sick
days, not
sick
sex days. So I went on and talked about sick days.
Sick days.
I've never been so relieved in my life, Matt. But how am I going to talk about this? I don't actually know what this is.
Well, it offers a fairly neat segue to something we're going to talk about in our What's Making News segment.
Indeed.
Procreation leave in Japan, Libby.
I feel like I have to say something to the listeners here, Matt, that please don't worry. The Floor Plan is not going to degenerate into some kind of reality TV show this year.
It's just following its natural course. Natural course.
So please go on, Matt. What is this story?
Well, 4-day work weeks being offered to young couples in Japan. It is in Japan, isn't it? Yes. Governor Yuriko Koyoki, I'm going to assume that's the pronunciation.
Almost.
Tokyo wanting to experiment with this, 4 days, a 4-day work week.
Which we know has been implemented, as we've talked about, in many countries now. It's great for well-being. It's great for productivity. It's great for reducing burnout. But this is a new one.
Regardless of what Elon says, there is science around all of this that says, thumbs up, this is a pretty good idea. But Tokyo, and perhaps they're leaning into this, the science of this a little bit, 4-day work week, but contingent upon one thing, and that's that you use your 5th day to help boost the population.
Not sure what to even say about
Procreation leave.
But maybe this phenomenon in the Northern Territory could become a thing.
They have a few problems with population growth and ageing
Japan,
population.
they do.
So, extreme
I'm not
measures.
sure that they've got this quite right though, Matt, because it also says in this article that they've offered the more kids you have, you get a bigger cash incentive,
Right.
a tax break.
Yep.
And the government has released a dating app that requires users to promise they're using it with the goal of marriage.
Little disclaimer in the fine print. As long as it's leading to some nuptials. But I like the sort of Churchillian edge to all of this. Now is the time for Tokyo to take the initiative to protect and enhance the lives, livelihoods and economy of our people during these challenging times for the nation. Now is the time, the governor said. Maybe Friday's the time.
It will be interesting to see the results of this, because previously when the government in Japan has tried to get people, I think it was only once a month, to leave at 3:00 because they have karoshi, death by overwork, in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And basically no one was doing it, I think 4% of the working population. But this may be more of an incentive. Let's see.
4-day weeks are a bit of a theme on today's episode, and we'll talk about our guest a little bit later on, who's going to be touching on this too. And 4-day weeks is a topic that we talk about fairly regularly for good reason, because hey, it's topical. People are doing it. People are living and breathing it and pondering the merits of it. But some significant news telling us that stacks and stacks of companies are making this very much a permanent thing. So regardless of what our politicians may be haggling over or arguing about, or Elon Musk waving his chainsaw and all that sort of thing, a lot of people are seeing the merits and are making it a set in stone permanent piece of their workplace culture.
Definitely in the UK, I think 200 companies was it that are keeping this on permanently. So I think we're going to see more and more of this as burnout rates increase. And science, let's rely on the evidence rather than one person's opinion.
Yes, indeed. Britain, though, I thought Britain would be a more conservative.
You know what they want to do on Friday, though?
Go to the pub.
Exactly, Matt.
Go down pub.
Exactly.
Go down pub.
Well,
or take some sex leave if you're a little further north in Edinburgh, Glasgow, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about enshittification last time round.
Have you managed to bring this word into your daily conversation?
I've been using it so much in the office to the point of
people have told you to shut up. What do my teenagers say? Wrap it up.
Yeah.
Do your kids say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
Yeah,
wrap it up. My youngest in particular. In shitification. But this week we'll be talking about micro-retirement.
For the Gen Zs. It's always the Gen Zs that are leading the way.
These funky words. Look, this isn't a new phenomenon. This concept has been around, I think, since the mid-2000s.
And Tim Ferriss, we've talked about Tim.
Yes.
He's not a Gen Z by any stretch of the imagination, but he was putting it out there. So this is quite quitting but luxe. So
what does it mean, though? What's that?
Well, work-life balance.
Yes.
And they apparently, these Gen Zs feel that the company just wants to wring every drop of work out of you without anything in return, and everyone's getting burnt out. So one of these Gen Zs said they were inspired by Tim Ferriss's book and took a 6-month micro-retirement instead of waiting till you're 60 or 70. Go and do it now. And so off she went and did that. And I remember actually having read Tim's book that he said the goal shouldn't be retirement. You shouldn't work 100 hours a week or 80 hours a week until you get to this age. And he said then in the first 2 weeks of retirement, you'll be so bored you want to, his words were, poke your eyes out with bicycle spokes. So you should, but this idea of project work and doing shorter contracts and then going off and traveling and so forth is definitely a rising trend. But I did like this term, the person she said she just made it up, but this is a micro retirement. Have you ever done this? I think a lot of our listeners can probably more easily relate to this. So a micro retirement is where you sneak away from your desk 3 times a day to cry in a toilet cubicle just to keep going. It's really sad, but it's true.
Sad but funny. I don't know. I've not done that. I can say that with much certainty. I have not done that in my time at Bond University.
No, but I have heard many times during the course of my career people saying the only place I can go to try and recover my mental health or get a break from the people I work with is in the toilet cubicle, which
Ooh,
gross.
goodness.
So micro retirements, people, or if you are experiencing a micro retirement and crying in the toilet 3 times a day, could be time to look for a new job.
See your friendly recruiter, I think. On the topic of change, I'm just circling back to our last episode. We were talking about New Year's resolutions.
Yes, we were.
And I was given some homework
You were.
to go and think about all of this. Well, I actually sort of struggled, but to think of something in particular that I want to try and achieve this year.
You could actually fit in, Gen Z's criticised for this, for not being super ambitious and goal-driven. So maybe you're actually a Gen Z in a Gen X body.
Gen X wolf's clothing. I thought about it, though. My eldest daughter is in year 12. And I think what primarily I would like to achieve this year is just to enjoy the ride of her last year at school with her as much as I can, which sounds horribly altruistic and probably a little bit sickly sweet. You only get one chance at it. So you might as well make the most of enjoying the moment. She's worked really hard to get to this point where she can enjoy her final year at school, and I just want to be available for it.
I think it's a great goal, Matt. And my eldest is also in grade 12 this year, and we've got the final parent-teacher interviews tonight, which I felt a bit nostalgic about last time. Like, I'm never going to have parent-teacher interviews with him again.
Just about to drop off one set of school fees, though, too. So there's that.
Very, very excited about that.
There's that too. Let's put the altruism to one side. There's a financial.
And I was supposed to report back on which language I'd chosen.
Oh yes.
And I must report that I can't decide because, Spanish, there are so many advantages, and I have this big love of Central America and Mayan archaeological sites, but I'm very attracted to French.
French
language.
Is the best. French is the best.
I think it's going to be French, so I can report back on that.
Who's our special guest today, Libby?
Today we've got Leschen Smaller, Matt, who was at 2 of the big 4 accounting firms, then left that, which we'll hear about why, and her journey to start her own accounting practice a few years ago, and has successfully implemented a number of really cool things in a very traditional hierarchical profession, which we've talked about, accounting and legal, with some great results.
Well, let's meet up. Leschen Smaller.
Leschen, welcome to The Floor Plan. I've been so excited to talk to you today about your journey, and I know a lot of people are going to be very, very interested in this because we talk about the research all the time about compressed work weeks and flexible work arrangements, but people still say, well, it's pretty difficult. I don't know how it would apply in my organisation, especially in professional services. And now you have come from working in 2 of the big 4 accounting firms and now have your own practice. So tell us a little bit about your journey through the big 4 and then to having your own firm.
Thanks, Libby. Great to be here. So great intro, but I guess, working in the big 4, 15, 20 years before I decided to start my own firm was probably exactly the reason that I did start my own firm, because I left the big 4 and I was interviewing and I'm going, you know what? I don't want to do or be part of the old way of doing things anymore. It doesn't work. It's not comfortable. Mind you, it does work for some people. But when I created Element, which was on my kitchen table, basically, it was with a view to being something completely different and to having a really open mind about how work was to be for everyone, for our team members, for clients, because being in accounting, as soon as I say accounting, everyone just wants to close their eyes and go to sleep. So we wanted to create something that was something completely different that made people feel comfortable, because when you come to our table or our office, you're talking about the stuff that you don't necessarily talk to your best friends about. We're talking about your finance, how your business is truly going. So we get into the nuts and bolts and nitty gritty pretty quickly, and we wanted people to feel comfortable, and not only the client side but also the team, because if you're working in the 9 to 5 grind, I think your innovation, your curiosity, your courage is more about focusing on your timesheets and not necessarily the service and the information that you're imparting to clients. And from the client side, you come in and you're in, I won't say sterile because that's unfair, because workplaces have changed a lot, but you're in a much more formal environment and you're expected to open up and be honest and vulnerable to get the best out of that moment with your accountant. And so that's what kind of started the journey into particularly our office design. And obviously we follow you, Libby, and your research a lot. And so we started to kind of think about how we were going to incorporate it into our office design.
There's so much I want to unpack there in terms of this philosophy and ideology, which is fantastic. But let's start with the office, because obviously, as you said, it's the first thing the client sees when they walk in. So why did you design? I know you've talked about wanting to have an office that doesn't look like an accounting office. Tell us about how you managed to achieve that. Maybe describe a little bit of it for us. And what was the journey to do that?
So I think it was all about this coming into an environment that promoted openness and comfort. And walking into a normal office environment was not going to provide that. So we knew that. And based on your research, it just wasn't going to encourage the employee or the team mindset that we wanted. And so we're going, well, what is? And then it was, again, with your stuff, it was, well, let's create something that's like you're coming into your home. So our office is based around a kitchen, in inverted commas, like a dining room, which is like our boardroom, and then an open design with loads of plants, very, I suppose, you got your big leather plumpy chair kind of environment, so that people just walk in and go, oh, I kind of feel at home. And then their whole adrenaline just slows down and they start to feel more comfortable. Same with the team members. And it just encourages those open conversations, as you know.
Well, I think that is a really important point, because most people don't feel very relaxed when they go to see their accountant.
Yeah.
Pretty stressed. And for the work itself, for your team, it is a stressful environment. And we'll share some photos with the listeners online in terms of, you have this beautiful, looks like a kitchen table, very nice light fittings, no horrible fluorescent lighting. And it makes people feel really different. And I think there is so much conversation now around the experience and experience design for your clients and for your staff, and that sometimes maybe they don't line up, but you've really shown in the way you've designed your office that it does line up. And have you had comments from staff and clients about that, who may have worked with other firms previously as well?
I think everyone that walks into the office goes, oh, wow. And I think the first sense is not of shock. Well, it is of shock. It's like, oh, I didn't expect this. Then the very next thing is, we talk about the home type environment. You can see everybody resonate with it, from the clients to the team. Obviously, when we take them around for a tour, so when they come, when they interview with us, you can see their eyes kind of go, oh, wow, this is different. And so, I feel like it's that first impression, and then it leads on, because everyone's cortisol is down, and it's just the conversations that we've had are amazing. And the office has promoted a lot of that.
And you didn't stop at just the office. Then you wanted to also completely have a different approach to how you do the work as well. And you implemented a 9-day fortnight in your firm, which has a few interesting aspects, including shutting the entire office. So not just giving everyone a 9-day fortnight and then that be on a different day, but closing the office, which to many people listening, particularly in professional services, would be terrifying to think about, because you think, well, this is work that never stops. Often nights, weekends, the clients will freak out and go to other firms. So why did you decide to trial a 9-day fortnight? And what was your approach to implementing that, in terms of saying, look, we're just going to shut the whole office on one day?
Yeah, so we do follow your research quite carefully, Libby. And I think you were having conversations about it. Plus, at that point in time, I think I was reading a lot about it. It was quite the topic of conversation. And I do have a business partner. So I rang her one day and I just said, look, I think we should just do a 9-day fortnight. I think you can see all the benefits of it, because as our 9 till 5 is really 8:30 till 7:38, whatever, it's not, you can't go and do your doctor's appointments, your lunches, deal with all your personal stuff without feeling guilty about it. I believe at this stage and how busy everything is. And giving someone that day to do that, to get your hair cut without going, oh, come on, hurry up, I can't sit in the seat for more than 45 minutes. It's almost like it's sort of like a gift, but it's just how life is at the moment. And I think if you want to keep team, you have to adapt to that concept that we've still got to give them time. We expect them to work hard, but we've still got to give them time to do all the things that they need to do to live, so that when they're at work, they're focused. And that living might be taking an extended holiday over, instead of having a 2-day weekend, they might go and do something over a 3-day weekend. But I think it's so important to give time back to people. We're so good at taking it away. But what it means is that when people are at work, they're not focused because they've got their laundry list of personal stuff to get, which I understand. I have that. So
we all have that.
We all have that, exactly. And that's the feedback that we got from clients was, oh my God, you're amazing. And we wish we had that. And I also think, because we contemplate, I have a business partner, and we talked about it a fair bit, because we went, do we have a skeleton crew on alternate Fridays? How do we actually do this productively for the firm, for the team, and for the clients? And so we came at it in all those different aspects. And then we went, you know what? It's just so much cleaner and simpler if we just shut the office on that second Friday or that fortnight. Everybody understands the goalposts are clear, they're not moving, and it's done. And that's what we did. And
but how did the clients react?
Yeah.
Because I imagine that must have been quite a shock, and I haven't heard of any other professional services firms doing this. Certainly they have flexibility and potentially 4-day weeks, but not, hey, let's give everyone the same day off.
Well, I think so. We transitioned ourselves into it. And what I mean by that is, when we shut the office, and we were very clear, we're shutting the office on that Friday, our email bounce backs were, hey, hope you understand, in the whole spirit of a team engagement, and with the new busy life that everybody kind of lives, we have a 9-day fortnight. I hope you all appreciate our time and space. And we didn't have one complaint.
Wow.
Not one. And like I said before, people were going, oh my God, I wish we could do this, or we are thinking of doing this.
Which is so good to hear, because I think leading by example, particularly in the industry that you're in, professional services, not having a staggered, compressed work week is really a fantastic benchmark and an inspiration. It's a case study that we can talk about to say, and I want to get into some more of the detail about the nuance and the questions I know that people will have. So it sounds like a relatively easy transition from the client side. And you sort of staggered it in over time in terms of implementing that. Were there any issues at the start in terms of people being unsure how it would work from the client side or from the staff side?
I think, if anything, it was more from the staff side, but in a good way, because we've given bonuses for Christmas, we've given monetary gifts or acknowledgements, and they don't scratch the benefit of what this 9-day fortnight does with the team. They resonate and value it so much. And what I mean by that is we did say, whatever we do, Libby, we always go, it has to work for the business as well as it has to work for you. And so what we did is we did put parameters around it, and the team have skin in the game. So
what do you mean by that?
So if we don't meet budget 2 months in a row, we have to work the 9-day fortnight the next month. And then it all starts again.
Has that happened many times? How long's the program been in place now?
18 months, and it's happened once.
Wow, that's a fantastic result.
Yeah. And everybody pulls together, because what we had was people coming in and going, well, I met my targets and I met mine. And we said, yeah, but this is a team target. So now what we have is everybody pitching in to help everybody else achieve the targets. And so there's that collaboration, the curiosity and how can I help you, the courage to put their hands up if they're feeling overwhelmed and then won't get through the work. Like it actually embodies all of our values, and it's worked.
I know a question that might come up, certainly I'm thinking, is, well, and having worked in the legal industry myself, what about that urgent thing? So what if somebody has some very urgent matter on that day when no one's available? Has that happened? Are there any such urgent things in accounting, compared to law? And if so, how have you overcome that, or how would you deal with that?
So it always happens because we have numerous deadlines. We have ATO deadlines, but we've also got client deadlines and finance deadlines. And so it does happen, but because we all value that so much, we will try and get the work done around that Friday. So we'll try to meet the target by the Thursday or the Wednesday, and everything's brought forward to try and meet that deadline. Of course, on the very odd, and I can probably count on one hand the number of times over an 18-month period where someone has had to work that Friday.
So you think people plan the work better and are more strategic in their thinking?
Correct.
Which is
much
a complaint I hear
in their thinking
all of the time from organisations who are working 10-day fortnights. And then in terms of, the uniqueness of your industry, of how productivity is measured, which on the one hand makes it quite clear, but it can also feel quite onerous, things like work in progress, billable hours versus non-billable hours. Have you seen an impact on those metrics that are sort of near and dear to professional services?
So I would say our productivity has increased as people become more focused. And I think the 9-day fortnight, because we also introduced further to that, was flexi hours. So, and by flexi hours, we not only talk about time, but we talk about location and we talk about work. So we try and make sure everyone is working in their genius. So some team members actually don't work any Fridays at all. And productivity, because obviously I said before, it has to work for the business as well as for the individual. So we're constantly reviewing productivity and write-offs. And if anything, productivity, as I said, has improved. Write-offs are still the same. So that means they've probably actually reduced slightly in terms of percentage. People are happier. The workspace and the team connectivity, which was another one of our boundaries around creating this flexi space for people, has remained intact.
And client service?
Client
service, how do you think that's been impacted?
I think that's actually the same. So it hasn't been adversely impacted. And because productivity has increased, what it has meant is that our work is moving through the office faster than it would normally do. And so that's like customer service has therefore improved. We've even got one of our team members working in the UK, and he wants to do that for 2 years. So we would have lost him if we hadn't availed him of this opportunity. And he was so relieved to hear that we would offer him such an opportunity, I guess. And so, yeah, he's now looking for a co-working space at the moment, but so far so good, because what it means then for us is we've almost, not quite, got a 24-hour firm, so that client service is not impacted at all.
I want to pick up on that because particularly in the current climate, we're hearing a lot about, well, at one end of the spectrum, people can't be trusted to work from home, to everyone's just better in the office because they're more productive when they're together, or they're more efficient or more innovative, and then working across time zones doesn't work. So I'd love to hear your sort of response back to that. You've made it work with numerous staff in your firm. How have you done that, and what can you tell us that helps people to let go of this mindset of, I have to see you to think that you're working and that there's only one way to do things, particularly in what is still quite a hierarchical and very traditional industry in professional services?
I go, what were the lessons of COVID? And that was everybody is different. And so when we offered, particularly the flexi hours, etc., not having to be in the office, it wasn't through lack of trust. It was through, and we've got our systems we as accountants, we have to have really, really strong protocols and security protocols in place. And so we do. And obviously we tell our team members that they have to have a dedicated space. So ignoring all of that, I wouldn't employ someone I didn't trust.
Such a good point.
And I don't need to see, if someone says to me, I am better at home than I am at work, why would I not let them work from home? And if I can, as you know, we just talked about timesheets and productivity and write-offs and all of the KPIs that we can actually monitor, why would I not go, sure, you hit your KPIs, you can work from home. You can work from Timbuktu for all I care, as long as we have some connectivity and we don't lose that connectivity and you meet those KPIs, or at least we have a conversation about them. Why wouldn't I let them do it?
I just want, if I could have a mic drop moment here. I can't, because Matt will get mad at me for wrecking the audio. But seriously, so you're an accountant, all of these things that we hear and, oh, let's just all have a group hug and do some yoga and go down to the beach and everything will be fine. Don't worry about the business. You're an accountant, your entire life running your own business and helping clients run their business is predicated on exactly the things you've talked about. Does it work for the business? Does it work for the staff? What are the metrics we need to achieve? You have very easy, challenging metrics in some cases in terms of the structure of the industry, but very easy to measure, right? In terms of productivity and things like that. And so you're hearing it from the source that it does work, it can work, and it can work extremely effectively on all of the metrics that we would care about. And so there really is no good reason not to think about it for your business, given even in an industry like accounting that is so traditional and so focused on, the idea that, well, I might need to turn to the person next to me and I might need to ask them a question. What about well-being for staff? Have you seen an impact on that, or things like retention or your ability to recruit new people as well?
Well, to be honest, if I reflect on it, well-being was probably where we initially came from, because out of COVID, accountants, particularly our younger team members, were pretty close to burnout, remembering they haven't had a long time in the industry. When we were in COVID, you were focused, job seeker, you were focused on the ATO website, like practically the whole day because of the changing circumstances, and it burned a lot of people out. And I think that really opened our eyes to, even more so, to team well-being. And I think that's when mental health for team really became more of a priority than it really ever has been. And so what we have seen, well, I suppose we've just taken it to another level. We've gone, well, in order to promote your well-being all of the time, or the majority of the time, how can we do that? And that is through some of this, the stuff that we're doing. And so it saves some of our team members 2 hours in traffic. They now have the ability to clock off at, some of them clock off at 4:30, but they're going, oh my gosh, what do I do with all this free time?
And yet they've still maintained the commitment to servicing the client, high-level work, supporting each other, and all of the cultural things that you would wish to happen out of an initiative like this.
Well, they talk to one another and us. So we have morning check-ins, afternoon check-ins. We still have huddle monthly. We still have work from it. So there are so many more contact points. And if anything, stuff that we would do over the phone, we now actually hop onto Teams. We're looking at one another. We're chatting away. And we actually have that tangent conversation where we never would have had that before.
Actually, I heard some doctors talking about that recently because of COVID, that the idea was before COVID, specialists in the hospital would have to get together supposedly to have this exact, whatever their version of a huddle is, catch up, sharing information. And that rarely happened because they were out in their own private practice. They were in surgery, they were on the road, or whatever the case may be. And when they switched that to Teams, he said now they all join all of the time. Hopefully not when they're in surgery, but the rest of the time. And so I think, that's a really good process change in itself, that yes, of course, there are many meetings that are better face-to-face, but as opposed to not meeting at all or being on the phone, then I think that is a real advantage. And what about for you as partners in terms of your well-being? Because we know we talk about staff burnout, but partners in professional services, it's an enormous issue. Have you noticed a significant change in the partner group?
And it also almost sounds a little bit cliche, but having a happy team has certainly reduced our stresses because we can focus on the business instead of working in it. And because everyone's doing the things that they need to do, we're not constantly like mother hen hovering over the top, because things are getting done in a better way because people have the time and space to think about it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's reducing your stress of worrying all the time about, is the work being done? Is the client being serviced? Are the team happy? And let's be honest, as partners or managers, that takes up a huge amount of headspace running a firm.
And when you talk about the client service point, I totally relate to that, because what we've also done is brought on so much more AI. So everything's automated. And then you've got a team that work, remote. Yes, they're still contactable. But because of what they're doing and how they're doing it, it has actually allowed my business partner and I time to call our clients more and add that human aspect over everything, which I think that's probably even more important.
And a question I've got that I know some of the listeners will be curious about as well. You've got obviously a good number of your team members who are in the office regularly, but you do have remote team members as well. And particularly, again, in professional services, we would often talk about the fact that overhearing conversations with clients, perhaps joining meetings with clients, modeling behavior in terms of the office, that learning is a huge reason to be in the office, especially for professions like accountants and lawyers, but many others as well. So how do you address that with those team members who are fully remote?
Yeah, so I guess there's a lot of on-the-job training. And so I mentioned before that maybe previously you would do things over the phone, whereas we use Teams a lot. And so when we go through review points, or if we're talking to someone about a particular training or learning point, we still are in effect face to face with them. But we're sharing spreadsheets, we're sharing documents, we're giving probably more personalized feedback, which actually ends up increasing the training than it would have had you done it on a more general basis. So we still have training, which everyone still attends, and they can do it remotely or not. That hasn't stopped by any stretch of the imagination. But the actual contact points, because having that person on Teams, that one-on-one time, it's so much more focused. I think there's so much value in that.
So for other professional service firms or any other organization who is considering a compressed work week, whether that be a 9-day fortnight or a 4-day work week, what advice would you give to them in terms of taking the leap or getting started with this?
So I do think you have to start off with, what does the business need? And within that is, how do we best enable our team members to be the best contributor to the firm? How can we help them to produce the best work that they possibly can? And if you can answer that with having a 9-day fortnight and putting some business KPIs around it, which most of us in financial services would be able to do, then why would you not do that? We were very clear with, so the other thing I don't know if I've mentioned is your KPIs need to be really transparent. So everybody knows where they are at any point in time in our firm. And I think that's part and parcel of it, because as much as you want them to trust you as you want us to trust them, did I even say that right? But you know what I mean? It goes both ways. And so having those transparent KPIs, I think, really work with our team. And again, it's just this whole business case, as opposed to attracting. You want your team members to be the best possible team members they can be. And this way just helps that, or should help it.
And do you think this is going to become more widespread in professional services in terms of flexible work models?
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
I think almost every industry you can possibly think of offers it in some shape or form.
Well, we know Mars Wrigley in Australia, and it's largely a manufacturing environment. They have implemented a 4-day work week for some time now. And so it is becoming more and more common across all industries that we might imagine this isn't really feasible. And do you think
you're really only limited by your imagination?
I love that. We don't want to make any stereotypes about accountants not having.
No, not when you're interviewing one. No.
Do you think that these type of work schedules are also really important to combat burnout in an industry that really suffers from that as a stigma?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of overwhelm, and I think we're actually facing a deficit of accountants actually coming into the market. And it's primarily because no one wants the burnout that everyone has heard about in our industry. So the more that we can overlay that with the human aspect, with being more flexible and working in people's genius, I think that will end up attracting, hopefully, people back into this industry, because it is actually the stuff that we deal with day to day, like, it's valuable.
And I often hear that from partners in various professional services firms that what was once a really aspirational, ultimate career path, now younger staff are saying, why would I want that? Look how stressed out you look. You're at the office 180 or 100 hours a week. Doesn't seem that appealing despite any financial incentive that might exist. So I think that's a really important point.
Yeah, I think we've just got to normalise it. But that's what COVID taught us. We're not machines. We've got AI for that, but we have to overlay that human aspect, not over all our clients, but over our team members as well. And none of us should be working that 100-hour week.
No. And I want to pick up on that actually on the future of work in accounting. Yeah. Where do you see that going in terms of, I know you've done a lot of research and training and work yourselves in your own firm around AI and automation. Where is that at in terms of your practice, and where do you see that going in the near term across the industry?
AI is, so AI in the immediate future, I think it'll obviously continue to be a tool. And in the medium to long term, I think it will become more and more essential to what we do. But it's still a tool. It can't replace some of the tasks that we do, but it can certainly automate a lot of our repetitive tasks, and there are a lot of them. So that would be a welcome change. And so the dynamics of accounting might change, but that will just enrich what we can impart to our clients and our industry. I see it as an essential part to staying up to date with the times, but to deepen our advice, kind of open our minds to things beyond the numbers, but that the numbers kind of tell us and guide us. And I welcome it. I just think that our advice will just be enriched by AI, would be my most succinct way of saying it.
It's been exciting to hear how you've really pushed the boundaries with your own practice in terms of the office and the workplace design, but also the model of work and how you've approached that. So what's next for your firm in terms of that innovation? Anything on the horizon?
Well, we'll be looking for a new office shortly.
You've outgrown that one.
We'll need to do redesign. But interestingly enough, we would still look for the same space because we still have team coming in and out. So it's still important to us that everybody has a desk. But yeah, that'll be our next big hurdle, I guess. But you know what? If we had a global firm, I would be wrapped. That would be the next thing.
Well, it sounds like you're well on the way already with a lot of best practice, which has been really, really inspiring to hear. Thank you so much for your time today, Leschen.
Thanks, Libby. I appreciate your time too.
Our guest on this edition of The Floor Plan, Leschen Smaller there, Libby. Really interesting. I suppose we could be accused from time to time of getting a little bit woo-woo in our discussion about workplaces and the future of work and all that kind of thing. But fascinating to balance that all out with someone who has just gone deep dive data. This is what the numbers tell us works.
And she is an accountant. So she's not going to implement a 9-day fortnight compressed work week, all of these initiatives, unless there's a benefit across the clients, the firm, and to the staff. So no reason not to do it. Great insights from Leschen.
Interesting. And on that note, until next time, Libby.
See you then, Matt.
You've been listening to The Floor Plan, a Bond University podcast hosted by Dr. Libby Sander and Matt Webber. For more Bond audio and podcast content, search for Bond University on Spotify.